about me?
Well, I will say that is, I mean, the whole streaming to YouTube and then, well, just the nature of Zoom. The nice thing, and really the point of this, is that we get, it's a record. It's for future, I mean, viewing. So it's sort of a resource that lives on, because you know how often like someone will post something wonderful like on a social media thread somewhere. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to like screen grab that, or it's going to disappear into the ether. So, you know, we hope that these conversations get locked in and people can reference them again and again.
Yeah, half the Twitter threads I post are the period at the end is someone going, I don't even know the name of the app, like web app, please unroll. And all of a sudden all my tweets are like on a page somewhere. I'm like, okay.
Whoa.
I will say, would have been nice, but that's good too.
Spike, as a little bit of well, not a little bit, a big fan, I gotta admit, I have screen grabbed a number of your threads as educational resources for myself. Yeah, truly, over the years too. So I'm very excited.
I'm happy to help.
Yeah. Oh wait, I guess Lindsay's gonna give us the nod when she's ready.
I think people are coming. Oh,
yeah. If you ever need anyone to like start crying halfway through discussing accountants of ancient Egypt, I'm your woman.
Oh well, okay.
Excellent. Absolutely
do
excellent.
Ask about ancient Egypt. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
We're live, Jonathan.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's get started then. Okay, well, welcome everybody. We can't see you, but we see that you're here, and we are very excited for that. My name is Jonathan Bartlett. I'm an illustrator. I am a teacher as well, but I'm also a board member here at the Society of Illustrators, here as if I'm sitting here. I'm not sitting at the Society of Illustrators. I wish I was. But rather, I'm broadcasting live, and I'm broadcasting live with a wonderful group of talented individuals that are going to share their stories here today. But just before we get into that, I want to do a little intro to kind of round this out. And so, first of all, I'm really proud to be able to bring, on behalf of the Society, to be able to bring this group together today so they can share their knowledge with everybody as a free resource for you, for the insight and, you know, your career goals, and possibly anything that can do to maybe, I don't know, push a career forward is what we're here to do. So helping, really, the Society of Illustrators' mission is just not only to promote the art of illustration, but also to educate and to do everything we can to help make the illustration community stronger and hopefully make careers stronger by offering that educational resource. So that's the goal, to help. It's why we do everything we do here. So just before we get started, I have to say, it'd be remiss of me to not say thank you to, of course, to Annelle Miller, our director, and Tim O'Brien, our president, and really everybody that works at the Society of Illustrators, who still through the pandemic is really busting their asses to continue to provide these resources. I guess just a small reminder to everyone, I don't see a list of names, but I'm sure some of you are back again from other previous panels that we've had. But this is the third installment, I'll say, in our open forum lecture series, I'll call it. And you know, I'm really proud of the conversations that have taken place. The first one was the early years of your career. Folks who had only been working for maybe 5 to 7 years, talking about those, well, every year is always hard, but those first couple of years especially. And then the next one we did was about marketing and promotion. And now today's topic, which I'm super excited about, is entrepreneurship. You know, I guess I would say illustration is not a wait and hope kind of career, you know, no matter what the case is. But more and more these days, especially, it's not just work with client, like wait and hope to work with clients, but rather work for yourself and pursue your own ideas, your own opportunities. That is illustrators being entrepreneurs, okay? So that's what the group is going to talk about, all of that, creating their own markets, taking their own ideas and trying to find the right people that they can sell it to, and I mean that in the best way possible, and having an outlet for their own creativity, and not just hoping that a client will give them the chance to draw the thing they want to draw. That and probably so much more is going to be covered. It's challenging and exciting all at the same time to do those kinds of things. So, like I said, I'm going to step off. I just wanted to make sure we brought everybody up to speed. But So I'm going to hand it over to Marc Scheff, who is our distinguished host today, and he'll introduce everybody, and we are hopefully going to have them on for an hour, maybe an hour and a half if we're lucky. And for everybody watching, or on the Zoom at least, I know you're in the chat room, but if you have questions, please submit them into Q&A. It will be easier for Marc to see the Q&A and then therefore possibly address those questions as he can. All right. So again, thank you. I cannot thank all of you for being here, and all of you, the panelists, enough. And with that, I will step back. Take it away. Marc, it's all you.
Thanks, Jonathan, and thanks for having us. Thanks to the SOI, to Anel and Tim, and all of you there having faith in me, putting trust in me to put this together. And huge thanks to this group of people who most of you didn't even know me before this, and I'm so grateful that you said yes to come and share your knowledge here. My entrepreneurial background is right here. I run Drawn and Drafted. I think I'm pointing to the right side, and Make Your Artwork, which is where we do our artist educational. We support artists in growing their business so they can make stuff. But I really want to get into the panel because we do have limited time. So I just want to take the first few minutes here and just let everyone on the panel, give a brief introduction of who they are and kind of what they might be known for, what they do in the world. And I will just start left to right on my screen with Yoshi.
Oh, good. Okay. Hi, I'm Yoshi Yoshitani. No pronouns. And I guess the stuff that I'm known for in my entrepreneurial side is I'm on Twitter. I do Kickstarters. I sell at conventions. I sell online. I do book covers for people on commission. The biggest project that I've been working on the past few years is a tarot deck. And that one is a tarot deck that meshes mythology and fairy tales from around the world with tarot cards. Originally, I was going to self-publish that, but that is now being published by 10 Speed Press, which is an imprint of Penguin Random House. So yeah, I've definitely gone back and forth between like self-publishing and then also going through big publishers as well and trying to do both sides. So yeah, I've run the gambit.
Let's go to Spike.
Hello, everyone. I'm C-Spike Trotman. Just Spike is fine. She, her pronouns. I am the founder, owner, and editor for life at Iron Circus Comics, which is Chicago's originally largest comics company, but we've recently branched out into an honest-to-God multimedia company with our first animation project, which is the Lackadaisy animated short. I'm a Kickstarter thought leader and early adopter. I ran my first project when the site launched in 2009, back when it would ruin your career and was very unprofessional. I, to date, have earned nearly $2 million over the course of 26 projects. And Kickstarter has been a major element of launching Iron Circus from a single creator self-publishing imprint into an internationally distributed small/mid press company. This is pretty much all I do with my life. Once upon a time, I wanted to be a cartoonist. Gosh, that would have been nice. But now I mostly just spend my days answering emails.
All right, thank you. Sarah, go ahead.
My name is Sara Alfageeh. I am an illustrator and creative director. I'm currently co-founder and art director at Multiverse. We're an online video game platform making it as easy as possible to play, share, and stream tabletop RPGs and just making that whole genre more accessible. I am also the graphic novelist behind Squire, set to debut with HarperCollins in 2022. And my background comes with a lot of community organizing and live show organizing with the creative collective Mipsters. We were based in Boston, LA, and NYC in creating like in-space areas where marginalized creators can come together and share their artwork in and have microloans and small grants so that we can enable the communities around us.
Awesome. I'm going to put Mipsters with a Z in the chat for folks. Jen, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jenna Ravenna Tran. I've been a concept artist and illustrator for the past 8 years. I've worked at small indie studios called Harebrained Schemes, and also larger studios like High Res and Microsoft. I'm currently at ArenaNet right now, working on Guild Wars 2, and I also freelance for Wizards of the Coast for Magic the Gathering, and I've done a handful of freelance projects with clients like Dark Horse and Valve and Riot, and now in my personal time, I started venturing into filmmaking, so I'm also a cinematographer and film director.
Awesome. And that's kind of where I want to go a little bit. So all of you have these sort of projects that are outside the, let's call it traditional kind of just getting client work thing. I'd love to hear some of your stories about, how that transition happened. Because I think, a lot of people look at what you guys have done and go, well, there's no, I wouldn't even know where to begin. So where did you begin? Feel free to jump in, whoever wants to start.
Well, I've been making comics for over 20 years. I was making comics in high school. I was making mini comics. I was printing stuff out at Kinko's and selling them in my high school. So I've been wanting to make comics for a really long time. But it's worth remembering I am old. I'm extremely old. I'm a crone. So it was like the turn of the century when I was deciding for real to try and sort of dedicate my professional life to making comics. And the comics landscape was extremely different from what it is now back then. That back then there was a lot of haha, comics won't exist in 10 years, joking, not really joking, we're all doomed, this is stupid, why are we doing this? And in 2020 people are going to say, comics, what are those? But yet here we are dedicating our life to comics. And that was kind of the prevailing attitude, where you didn't know how serious people might be when they were saying stuff like that. But it didn't feel good. We had just come off of the black and white bust that followed the black and white boom. This was just a few years out from, God, who declared, I don't even remember who declared bankruptcy and who majorly downsized. I believed it was Marvel who declared bankruptcy, and DC who majorly downsized. And there was all the distributors that weren't Diamond just went up in smoke, and thousands of shops closed, and it was just a bad scene. It was a bad scene. And it was with this burning dumpster of an industry, I decided to swan dive directly in and say, oh yes, this is the place for me, amongst the trash and the fire. Yes. And we early on, when I say we, I mean a lot of like cartoonists who were like in the early 20s at the turn of the century, we were just sort of flailing around trying to figure out what to do. And there was no Kickstarter, there was no Patreon, there was no roadmap. Nobody knew what to try or what to do. And so we were willing to try anything. We were on subscription sites back when those absolutely did not work. We were doing like 20 cons a year, sleeping 6 to a room, deciding who gets the bed that night and who gets the bathtub. And it was just, there's a lot of grind involved early on. But as we worked things out and sort of built our audiences, we came to understand that there was the old sort of infrastructure was not going to be there for anyone, period, but especially not for people like me, because I didn't want to make superhero stories and I didn't want to make newspaper strips. So basically my only option was alternative comics. And alternative comics, you didn't make a living doing alternative comics. That's just absurd. No one does that.
Right.
But I was among sort of the first wave of webcomic artists who figured that out. And it just kind of went from there.
Well, you told me, just to follow up a little bit, you told me when we spoke before that you were kind of building, you were using every tool you had in the book at the time, which was like, online tip jars and trying to get people to pay for kind of a regular thing. And things kind of shifted in like 2007, 2009.
2009 was when Kickstarter launched. And it was an interesting time because there were never Kickstarter people. There were people who, oh my God, yes, I've seen that site. How undignified, oh my God, it's like begging. It's like being a hobo with your hat out. How can you have any dignity and use Kickstarter? How ridiculous. I'd never use it. But all I could think is this is just a transparent, more discoverable version of what pretty much everyone in webcomics was doing anyway, which is, okay, it's time to print the book. go into Photoshop, make the little thermometer graphic, and then stick it at the top of your site, and then make a blog update that was, hey everybody, it's time to print the book. Here's my PayPal link. Here's me taking my life in my fucking hands, because if PayPal finds out I'm taking money without providing a service, they will come for me and my PayPal account will be locked. But let's do this anyway because I have no options. And every day you'd go and check your PayPal, and then you'd update the thermometer graphic, and then at the end of a couple of weeks, yay, we made it, hooray. That's what like pretty much everyone who was in webcomics was doing, because when you had a book, that's when the real money started coming in, because then you could go to conventions and you could sell the book, as opposed to the prints and the stickers and the charms, which were, yeah, they were fine, but they were like $3. The book was $15, haha. So that made a fractal amount of difference. And when Kickstarter came along, I was like, oh my God, it's perfect. I don't have to automatically update the thermometer, for starters. And you know, you don't have to just take my word for it that we now have $300. Like, there's the site. The site says we have $300. You can believe the site. The site has nothing in this for me. And I, like I said, was an early adopter, and 2009 was the year it launched, and 2009 was the year I launched Poorcraft, which was my very first Kickstarter. And I could be wrong, but I think it made like $13,000, which, believe it or not, in 2009, people were like, that's so much, you know, which is very funny. But yeah, I love the system, and I was already using it. And I just sort of, from there on, I just tried to launch one. After Poorcraft came out, it took 2 years to produce. I tried to launch one kind of at least yearly. And that was where I sort of, sorry, I know I'm monopolizing, but that was where I kind of made up the, I guess you call it the anthology model, that kind of every comics anthology uses on Kickstarter now, which is incentivizes people to donate, because the more the Kickstarter makes, the more the participants make, which incentivizes people to not wait for it to be in stores, and also incentivizes participants to do promo. So instead of me tweeting and posting to Instagram and posting to Facebook, I have 20 people doing it, because their paychecks are related to how much they do it. So yeah, that's kind of the thing you see now, like everybody does that. But again, I reiterate, I'm old, I'm 1,000 years old. And I remember when nobody got paid for comics anthologies. That was ridiculous. The idea that you would get paid for a alternative comics anthologies, like, no, you got comp copies and you sold them at Itty Bitty Con down the road. You didn't get paid. But now being paid is just standard.
I want to turn it to Yoshi for a minute, because I know you do a lot of conventions, and you talked, we spoke about kind of how you shifted from sort of doing stuff that maybe other people would like into doing more of your own stuff, and how that threaded through your own convention experience.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like how I started is originally I definitely wanted to do big studio work. Like I was like, oh, this is the thing to do, is join a big studio, you get a job, you have the security. And yeah, that didn't work out as well as I thought it would. It turns out that if you have a really terrible manager who's not cool, then it is actually the worst experience of your life, and just really burns you out for a few years. So I remember that happened to me, and I kind of retreated to like a smaller company that was just like very chill. In fact, they were like chill enough that I was able to start selling at conventions and like being on Twitter. And I was like, well, this is me recuperating for myself. Like, instead of doing art for other people that I'm not excited about, I'm only going to do art that I want to do. Like, because I have like this job that is giving me like the paycheck security and was giving me health insurance. I was like, well, I can take this time to now just do this for myself. And yeah, it was interesting. The first couple of conventions that I did, like, you know, I realized that I wasn't as focused in my art as I like could be to be like successful. Like, one of the things I definitely had was I had a cute kind of slice of life comic that I was working on, but I also had sort of this like dark fairy tale art. And it was just interesting having people like physically IRL come up to my booth and buy either one or the other. Like, I didn't have people buy the cute art and the fairy tale art. They would either just buy this or just buy that. And yeah, and it was really interesting to just see physically people interact with that. And it really gave me the focus to sort of start paring down and be like, okay, these are things that don't work. This is what works. What is something that I actually feel like I could do for the next like 50 years of my life? That's when I was like, oh, I like this cute slice of life comic, but like, am I gonna want to keep doing this in like 5 years? No, I think I'm actually more into this other stuff. So it was just like one of those things that was really good seeing in person. And you know, I started doing Kickstarters further down the line when it had already been established. Thank you so much. As a, and there were like Kickstarter people, and like there were people on this platform. Yeah, I started using Kickstarter. Actually, kind of going back to my my tarot deck that I was working on. I knew that that was going to be a huge project to self-publish. Like, just looking at other, like at this point, there had been so many other people who had done tarot decks on Kickstarter. I could see like, okay, you know, to have a successful tarot deck Kickstarter, you probably need to raise like 30K to just like try and print the tarot decks, because it's a lot of images, you know, and the tarot decks are probably going to be like $65 per deck. So I was like, okay, that's like a lot of money for me, who has never seen that huge chunk of money at once. I was like, this is I'm gonna have to practice on something smaller. So I did some smaller Kickstarters, like I did an enamel pin Kickstarter, where I was like, okay, like if I fuck up on this, like it's like closer to like $1,000 or $2,000 of fuck up, which is not great, but it's like doable, versus something like a 30K fuck up. Like that's so much money to fuck up on. So, but yeah, but I mean, like, so it's one of those things that like each of my Kickstarters, like I try to get a little bit bigger and a little bit smarter about what I'm doing and like what people are interested in. And yeah, like, you know, keep doing that pairing, like what are people reacting to that I'm making, but also like, what do I want to keep doing? Because I mean, it is important to see what the client is out there, like what people are reacting to positively, but it is also important to like not just follow down what you think people want, because if you do that, then you start, that's how you end up being like, oh, superhero comics, that's the only thing that sells, right? And it's like, no, like remember to keep following what you also want to do, you know, while reacting to that. So
yeah, you know, Sarah, you told me something in our conversation which stuck with me. Is I asked you who your audience was for your work, and you said me, which I think ties in really well to kind of how you know got started with the many different things that you do.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really interesting for me. So I came up at a very different time, and I'm definitely on the younger end of the spectrum for this panel. You know, I'm just a couple years out of art school, and it was this really interesting dual reality that I was seeing, where I was very online. You know, I grew up with the Tumblr fan art and the blogs, and for me, art was other, you know, 17-year-olds like drawing the things that they absolutely adore, and finding like peers and success and connections and a network through doing something super self-indulgent, and really truly enjoying their time while there. And then seeing the art school model of like, and this is how you present yourself, and if you want to get into the New York Times, this is what you do, and this is the definition of success, and these are the institutions who validate you. And it's like, on one hand, I want the validation of those institutions. I'm told that like that's what dignifies you as an illustrator. And then on the other hand, I'm watching people in their early 20s raking in thousands of dollars watch like over fictional characters, and I'm just like, so do I have to compromise? Do I follow the money and hope that it doesn't run out? Do I follow this more dignified institution and hope I get in? And as I was kind of navigating this stuff in my own senior year of college, I realized more and more, one, I was just simply burnt out. And I remembered at the end of the day, I just truly love doing art. I truly love my job, and there's a reason I keep going back to it. And I started making genuinely self-indulgent work. And for me, that looked like girls with swords and people who kind of like shared my own background and stuff that let me do like historical research, things that first and foremost were for me. And by far, that is the thing that people immediately reacted to. And it very quickly snowballed what would become the illustration career I have now. And I would never forget that. The moment I did something from my own perspective, self-indulgent, and from kind of a viewpoint that, one, I didn't see anywhere else, I was responding to that need first, and two, that I was having the most fun with. I truly believe like, that without sounding too artsy fartsy, like that translates into the work that you're doing. When people can tell when you give a shit, like quite immediately. And that ultimately ended up working. I was getting the attention of more mainstream clients, from those institutions that I was being told to appeal to. And at the same time, finding like a homegrown audience for myself at conventions and online. And I pretty much owe my entire career to Twitter, like completely. It wasn't to, annuals, it wasn't to grants, it wasn't to the New Yorker. It was from people just excited to see girls with swords.
That's great. Jen, you're here. Oh, sorry, your camera switched on me. But you took a slightly different move from some of the others into some film work that which is kind of how I connected with you on Twitter. That's when I kind of got in on the story. But you still, as you said, you work at ArenaNet, but you've also got this incredible kind of alter ego. And can you tell us kind of about how you stepped into that?
Sure, yeah. So to be totally honest with you all, I don't love drawing all the time. To help kind of fulfill just other creative needs, I do photography as well. And in the beginning, I did this as my creative outlet to just kind of relax after work and recharge, but also do something that was also still kind of fueling my visual library and still kind of related to what I was doing. And it's also another form of storytelling to me, which is something that I wanted to explore more. And the more I did photography, the more I realized that I wanted to try to do something with motion pictures. And so after that, I researched some and I went to a 10-week cinematography intensive in Maine and studied filmmaking there, what it's like to use a film camera, what's it like to work at a crew, what's it like to build a full-fledged film production. And from there, I fell in love with the craft, honestly. I think talking from an honest place, after 8 years in video games and especially working in the fantasy and sci-fi realm, I think there was a part of me who was feeling like I was losing touch with some of the more emotional needs of being creative and wanting to find more of my own voice, like outside of client work and outside of studio work, which is the majority of what I was doing at the time. And for me, film making just enables me to storytell and also connect with people in a way I don't feel like I can always connect with my concept artwork, for example, which is like mostly like problem solving for studios or like client work. And so I started getting into film, I guess, through time and allowing myself to explore other mediums.
Mm-hmm. So all of you, one question I have written down here is just about how you work. I think there's this image of the illustrator. I think we've probably either drawn or seen this image of the illustrator alone in their cave with the one light on and it's dark and they're just doing this all the time through the night, 24 hours a day. But it strikes me that most or all of you don't work alone on some of these projects. I think it's daunting to look at what y'all have done just through the lens of your Twitter and go, oh my God, like these people, they've done this whole thing by themselves. Can you talk a little bit about how you how you work with other people, but I think that, I can say I am very sure that you all inspire other people and get people kind of bought into these ideas of these projects. And can you talk a little bit about how you have either worked with teams or grown your team or met your team and gotten them on board? Feel free to jump in, anyone.
Well, I refer to 2018 as the year I learned I stress vomit, which is because I came from small press independent comics, and small press independent comics is very scrappy. It's very DIY. It's very, I don't know how to do it, but hold on, let me Google some shit and I'll figure out how to do it. So a lot of people in the scene, they do their own pre-press, they do their own quote seeking, they do their own art writing. They're just sort of like one person shows. It's really common in small press comics for that to be the case. But as Iron Circus was scaling up, it became literally impossible for me to handle everything. And it got to the point where I was already working, and I still do to a degree, because I should note, like, I enjoy my work. This isn't me bitching, but I basically work 7 days a week. Every hour I am awake and not eating or peeing, I'm working to some degree. And that's how I want it. I'm just that person. But it got to the point where doing that wasn't getting everything that needed to be done. And no matter how much I was working, I was falling farther and farther behind and disappointing more and more people and blowing more and more deadlines. And so I started puking. And it sort of occurred to me one day, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. This isn't normal. And it was then I decided, okay, I have to find people to work with. And so currently, fast forward to 2020, Iron Circus is me. It's my husband, who basically handles all the fulfillment, the shipping, the customer service stuff. It is my print tech. It is my publicist. It is my assistant editor. It is 2 to 3 floating editors that handle specific jobs, a proofreader, and my liaisons with my printers, and also my my distro, which is Ingram International, where we have meetings to strategize. So Iron Circus is a big multi-person effort in an effort to get 12 books out a year. What's kind of my goal. COVID made sure that's not happening, but we do put out a lot of books. That's why when I'm asked to describe us, I call us a small mid publisher. And I have no degrees in publishing. I have no sort of professional training. I'm kind of learning as I go along. And it's like I got my distro because I heard that Book Expo was in town, and like a fucking 4th grader, I put together like a goddamn book report thing talking about Iron Circus and highlighting this is how much money we made last year. This is how many books we published last year. This is our projected revenue for this year, and this is what we would like to achieve. And
that's a little bit more than a 4th grader can handle. I can tell you because I have one.
But it felt very 4th gradery because I was like doing this whole sort of, look, I'm good, I'm worthy, pay attention to me. And to a degree I over prepared because I went to Book Expo and I had my list of distros, and I refer to it as very eye of the tiger moment, where I was just ready to be like, I don't care what you think of me, you're going to take Iron Circus on because we're worth it. And the thing that I think really sealed the deal was at that point, again, this is where the whole indie small press DIY, I can do it on my own thing comes in, where we didn't have decent distribution. Anyone who's in comics can tell you about Diamond Distro. We didn't have decent distribution. So what we had ended up doing was grassroots distro, where we just gave a bunch of comic shops a discount code that took 50% off all orders in the online store. And we were direct distroing to comic shops. And it got to the point where my husband could not handle it because we were servicing 40 different comic shops that way, and it was getting to be too much. So I would roll up to these distros and be all like, hi, I'm tired. It's like, help us. And every single distro was emailing me after the show. So that was very validating. But yeah, like I always describe kind of how I learned to get along in the publishing world as opposed to just strictly the creative world. There's a GIF from Wallace and Gromit. I think it's from The Wrong Pants, where Gromit is on a toy train and the train is zooming along, and he's got a box of track under his arm. And as the train is like zooming along, he's putting down more and more track. That's kind of what learning publishing has been.
Sarah, why don't we turn it to you? Because you were talking about the Mipsters project. You can talk about that or anything you want, but I know that you don't work alone on these things. And how did you, I'd love to hear from people too, kind of how you found people, maybe how you found that first person even, but also, if there's any pitfalls that we should watch out for if we're thinking about building a team for our project as well. But I'll turn it to Sarah.
Yeah, for me, honestly, I kind of sat with myself when I started realizing, all right, it's time to present myself as a professional. And all it really took to to become a professional was to decide that I was, and because I realized like, oh, audiences and clients actually do not give a shit if you've graduated or not. They don't care where you've come from. They just care if like, can you do the thing and can they get excited about what you do, which is really cool. That's why I love the creative industries.
Yeah.
And for me, it was realizing like, all right, what do I value? Do I value my own time? Do I value my social life? Do I value doing my own creative projects and that kind of thing? And for me, my values were, it's like, one, I'm extremely extroverted. The best way I work is like with other people. I get my energy from being around other people, which is hilarious to say because I am still doing comics, which is a very isolating job. But even then, it's like you figure it out. So for me, I was like, I want to work with other people. What does it take to do that? I want to do my own ideas. What does it take to do that? And for me, I'm lucky enough that I was able to get my start early enough, and through the projects that I did where I hardly ever have to compromise what I want to do versus like what jobs are available to me. Because first and foremost, I presented myself only with the work that I was already interested in. I never put on my portfolio work that I thought was good, but I didn't care to do anymore. And usually when I talk to emerging artists, I tell them, only put the stuff that you're willing to do again, or else you're just gonna get stuck doing the same thing again and again. And of course, do what you gotta do to pay the bills. But like, the more work you do, the more you attract the same thing. And I actually wanna say with our company, with our startup, our company culture, because it is, you know, more creative focused, has been very much around like work with people who are so ready to share their own excitement and are genuinely invested in what other people are excited about, which to say it in a single word is like, I like to work with nerds. And there's like a real joy to it. People who are willing to give everything they have into what they're passionate about. And that just, it sounds like very kumbaya, but it's incredibly difficult to stick to that value, but it's so much more worth it to surround yourself with people who are invested in your excitement as much as you are invested in theirs. And again, I think everyone in this panel is part of the reason why I agreed to doing this panel with you people in particular. You understand like how important it is as illustrators to recognize everyone around you most of the time wants the best for you. And there's like, what's kind of beautiful about the moment that we're in is there's like scarcity is an illusion. You can kind of create the opportunities you want to see through the different resources we have now online, like with Patreon, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. Like if you don't see the thing you want to do, if you work hard enough, you can create that spot for yourself. And that's incredibly exciting.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. I'd like to turn it to Jen to talk. Do you need another prompt? I almost forget what the question was. That was so good. But I know that you work with other people. Obviously, you know, the film that you just submitted to the festivals. Congratulations, and completed and funded in part through Kickstarter. Yeah. But I'd love for you to talk about that as well, because let's get real. Like, you know, Kickstarter. You know, the people look and they're like 30K, 60K. Wow, they're rolling in it. Talk about how you translate. However you wish to talk about that as it relates to you working with teams when you did the film.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess I should talk a little bit about that. I have a short film about it's about a 17-minute short film about two women who meet and fall in love in Tokyo, and we raised over $100,000 for the film project. Which sounds like a lot, thank you. But the reality is, like, it takes a lot to make a film, even a short film. Yeah, as Spike knows. There's me, the director. There's a director of photography. There's a camera assistant, a gaffer who's a lighting artist. We have like 4 producers, production assistants, extras. We had like 20 plus extras on set. We have 2 actresses, a Steadicam operator. There's just like, and like, that's only like part of the team. There's like double, triple that. And the thing is, I was stupid enough to do my first short film internationally for some reason. And so that was extra hard. And unlike Sarah, I'm very introverted and shy. So I'm not sure how we did it, but the thing is, I think when you love something enough, you're able to put aside some of those challenges and just kind of go for it. And I think that when you're kind of more on the shy side, it's important to build a team that you can trust, so you can delegate different responsibilities to. And yes, part of that is finding people who are invested in your project, in your ideas, who have similar lines of thinking. For this project, all of us really believed in the story, and we wanted to see more romances like this on screen, and more representation in front of the camera and behind the camera as well. And so and because it's Tokyo, I was able to convince people from the film school that I went to, and other acquaintances to come to Tokyo. So people from LA, San Francisco, London, Australia, Seattle, Chile, to come to Tokyo. And we all internationally collaborated on this project together. And it helped that I paid for their flight, of course, which Kickstarter, we raised enough. The original production costs, I think, in total costs anywhere from 50 to 60,000. But with Kickstarter, there's always like merchandise costs, shipping costs, which takes a chunk out, like fees and taxes and all that too. Half of the team in the beginning were compensated, and the other half came because I pretty much organized everything with my producers and fronted everything. The equipment alone, like for filmmaking, the barrier of entry is so high because financially it's like, even to rent the camera package alone, that was like for 3 days, it was about I think 12,000. And then separately for that, it was $4,000 for insurance alone. So but with the Kickstarter, we were able to compensate everybody in the end with that, which was great.
Always budget before you launch a Kickstarter, everybody.
Yeah, it seems like it's really hard to know even what to budget for. Like I feel
you
like
don't know until you know.
Yeah, and Yoshi, you were talking about this when we were talking too, about kind of starting with, there's a 5-year-old over there, so you may hear her. You were talking about like how you sort of recommend starting with sort of smaller projects, cutting your teeth, failing small, so that you understand, oh yeah, there's shipping costs. If I had done this at 100 grand, where would I have come up with that 40 grand of shipping costs? I might even prompt you a little bit more with this question that we got about just about developing your tarot deck, because I think that's kind of an interesting start to finish thread about how this kind of happens.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess from that standpoint, like I said, I did start with a smaller Kickstarter, so that was easier to like fuck up on. And yeah, that one I was anticipating, like I said, eventually making my tarot deck. But the tarot deck I had been working on, by the way, I low-key don't recommend anyone doing a tarot deck. It does take 3 to 5 years to draw a tarot deck, which I found out as I was already like 15 cards in. So
you had a good tip on that when we talked. You said not tarot deck, but to do a
Zodiac set is great because that's like 12 images. I love series. The series are great. I mean, obviously, of course, don't listen to me. I didn't listen to me. Do you? But I mean, it was one of those things where I was like, I did get a publisher because, like, you know, I had been working on this tarot deck for like 3.5 years. People like, it was good because like people started being really excited and anticipating the next card coming out, and they're like, what's the next culture you're going to reference? Like, what's the next card you're going to do? Like, I got a lot of people being like, oh, here's a story that I grew up that I like never see drawn. Maybe this is something you could be interested. It was really great. So it was like a great like community experience. I really enjoyed that. But like, it was also an experience that my publisher like eventually picked up on and was like, oh, I'm also excited about this. And I was like, wow, that's so great. I'm really excited to have this because international distribution, like I can't even speak to it. Like also, again, like the tarot deck, if I were going to be publishing it myself, that was going to be $65 a deck, which, you know, that's great, but that's not really accessible to a lot of people. And I really wanted it to be like as accessible as possible. So my publisher, because they are like an imprint of Penguin Random House, like the tarot deck is under $20. So that's like, that's a way more accessible, and that's great. But of course, like I had that and I was like, well, now I have all these Kickstarter learnings, like what can I do with this instead? So I decided to make a bomber jack and small clothing line. And that one was great, raising a little under 100K. But to like, to Jenna, thank you. But to Jenna Ravenna's point, like 100K like means fuck all. Like I sent every single dime of that to go get the products manufactured. Like, because, you know, when you're going into manufacturing, they're like, oh, well, you have to order a minimum like of 100 jackets in each size. So it was important for me to offer sizes like extra small to triple XL. So that was like, I had to order a minimum of 100 of each of those sizes. And there are certain sizes that are just more popular than others. So you have to order more of like those sizes and less of the other sizes, but you still can't order less than 100. So again, like all that tallied up and I was like, well, this is exactly 100K. So thank you, Kickstarter, for this money, and goodbye. Like I see none of this. I mean, I guess like the thing is the way that I've been using my Kickstarter models, and I think a lot of people do, is that, you know, via Kickstarter, I sold, I'd have to check the numbers, but I'll say I sold like 200 jackets, but I bought like 700. Again, don't quote me on these numbers. I don't know exactly what they are, but you know, the idea is that I now have all these jackets that whenever conventions start up again, this is what I'm going to be taking to conventions, is selling these like jackets and selling the t-shirts and selling the books, and then also selling those online, and all of those like will be distributed. So yeah, that's the methodology. And like I said, if you're going to fail, try to fail small first, learn all your lessons there, and then just keep scaling up. And then I think also you were talking about like with a team, I don't really have like a team per se, but I do have a lot of people that I work with. And a lot of the people that I work with, it's because I tried to do that task myself. And I was like, I can do this fine, but I hate doing this. It would be much better if I got someone else who could do this more effectively than me, and I'll pay them. And then like they can, you know, we can be like, they can reap the benefits of like my brand, and I can help them out and they can help me out. And it's great. Like I think like distribution was a big thing, shipping. Like at one point I was shipping everything out of my own house, and I live in a small apartment, and that was the entirety of the bed. I was basically sleeping on top of my boxes. My fiance loved that. You couldn't see the windows. But yeah, like getting someone else to like take over like all the shipping and handling, that was a big thing. I've started getting people to help me out at conventions, so that it's not just me behind a table, but like I can have someone else who's like assisting me. So like I can actually start taking pee breaks. That's great. Like, but it's just like those things where it's like, I think it is important to kind of like work and see where like the stress points are, and be like, okay, what is a path that's not worth pursuing because this is like too much trouble? Like you know, if you're not getting joy out of it, if it's not really helping you, if it's not bringing something to you, why are you doing it? Just cut it out. And then also figuring out like what are stress points that are worth pursuing, and you're like, okay, how can I make this easier for me? Like what people can I bring in to help me who has done this before that I can get advice from?
Yeah, there's
learning
stuff that's
to
worth.
delegate. Learning to delegate is incredibly important. Understanding that just because you can do it, that you are physically capable of doing it, doesn't mean that's the best imaginable way to spend your time.
Yeah.
Your mental health, your physical health. So many of these jobs that we're talking about are physical jobs, you know, whether it is comics or it is shipping, or it is like, don't save the money, save your shoulders. Like it won't be worth it. My first Kickstarter, which was a tiny project that I was doing my junior year of college, you know, again, just to see if I could do it. And that was actually the Kickstarter that caught the attention of my current editor at HarperCollins. But that ended up giving me carpal tunnel. That's when I learned my lesson. And thank God I learned that lesson early, like while I was between semesters, or I don't know what would have happened. That was like the first time I was really shaken. It's like not just about mental stress. It's not just about like managing, you know, stresses and anxieties and all that, and financial burden. It's your literal hands that are at risk.
I know that there's probably people in the audience going, man, I'd love to have that carpal tunnel. I'd love to have that many books to ship that I would get carpal tunnel. But yeah, no, delegated. You got y'all. This hour has flown by. We've got a little bit more time, and I want to ask the sort of what I had kind of as a closing question, which came full credit completely from Spike, and I thought it was a beautiful question. And I'll let you all answer. And then if we have some time, I can get to, there's a couple questions in the Q&A area. And for those who are on the Zoom watching, there is a Q&A button. If you have other questions, throw them in. Otherwise, I've got a few more to round out the talk. But this is Spike's question. What's one dream that you have left unfulfilled and what's getting in the way? In fact, let's just give it to you, Spike, because this was yours.
Yes. I am almost pathologically ambitious, just generally speaking. And Iron Circus started out, like I said, as just a single person self-publishing fancy pants imprint. Look at me, I registered as a sole proprietorship, woohoo. But now it's kind of grown into this thing, and it has the capability of entertaining possibilities that I would have never dreamed it could. And like I said, it started out this year as it sort of morphed. It evolved into a bona fide multimedia company, because now I'm an executive producer on an animated short, which is hilarious to me. But also, it's like my ambitions don't really end with animation and comics. Like, I would like to make some video games, please. And for the past year or 2 years, I've been sort of investigating programs and investigating the best way to go about making baby's first game where it won't be an unmitigated disaster, because it's my first game, and first time projects, especially video games, have a way of crashing and burning, but also making something that I can look at this and go, is this fun? Will people play this? And sort of figuring out how much I am going to be involved and where I'm going to be involved in that process. So this has been a lot of scouting things out the past couple years, and sort of taking it back to the whole understanding when and where to delegate. I spent about a year teaching myself programming, and then I realized, is this really the best way to spend your time? Because you have a whole lot of other responsibilities, and you're dedicating 2 hours a night to learning programming, which is, it's good. That's nice that you're doing that, so that when the time comes, you kind of understand the code. But you can hire a person to do this. You know, you can hire a person who has spent the last 10 years learning programming, and it's a thing you can afford, and it would save a lot of time. So maybe do that, stupid. You know, it's like, oh, right, okay, let's do that. And so hopefully, fingers crossed, this will no longer be an ambition in the coming years. It will be a reality, but that's my big thing now. I want to make video games so bad.
Yoshi, why don't we turn it to you? What's one dream that you have left unfulfilled, and what's in your way right now?
You know, I would say that I'm I'm like probably a relatively short-term thinker. I know. I'm like, maybe that sounds a little ridiculous.
You're like dinner. I don't know. You know.
I know. Well, I guess I think that I tend to think about things a lot more in like 6-month increments. I'm kind of like, what's the thing I want to do in like 6 months? And I try to keep myself like pretty flexible in terms of like what opportunities or things I might be interested in pursuing in the future. You know, it's like one of those things, like I did a comic book for DC, or a graphic novel, but like I didn't know if I wanted to do that until they approached me and they were like, hey, like what if you did this? And I was like, you know, I don't know, what if I did do this? You know, and it's like I had the tarot deck and I was like, I'll probably self-publish, and the publisher was like, but what if we took it on? I'm like, oh yeah, that's a thought, you know. I think like they were like, that's cool because you've got to finish everything in 4 months. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's only like 15 more cards. It's fine, right? It was not fine, but it's fine now. I think like I like I said, and even me getting into doing this like, you know, self entrepreneur stuff was like from just kind of getting away from the companies that I was at before. I was like, wow, this is really not working for me. Like, what's something I can do that'll make me happy for like the next 6 months, and like kind of keep pursuing things like from that standpoint. So, you know, I do try to keep myself like pretty flexible. There are a lot of things that like, there are a lot of opportunities that I think I haven't been approached with that I would really enjoy doing. But there are also opportunities that people have said to me, they're like, would you be interested in this? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that one. Like, especially like the more stuff that I have done and the more experience I have, like, I'm like, oh yeah, this thing made me miserable. I did that before. I'm not going to do that again. So I don't know, like, I can't tell you what I would be interested in like 3 years from now. That's like, that is too fucking far down the line. But yeah, I think I'm just going to keep pursuing what I find fun and interesting and what like brings me joy.
Well, it's interesting. You said this maybe in not so many words, but you do. It seems like you do say no to a number of things. So you're at least good at identifying. And I think we're all familiar with this idea. I think I forget. Maybe Sarah said, you know, pay the bills, get it done. But also, you know, look for those projects that, to borrow a phrase, spark joy. You know, my wife always tells, you know, whenever I'm talking about taking on something new, she's like, do you really want to do that? I'm like, yeah, I don't know why I got excited about it. I get excited about everything. So,
yeah, I mean, like, I would just say like really quickly, because we've talked about this before, but like, I mean, like I said, I think it is totally fine to stay at like a big company. Like, there is something to be said about just like doing a 9 to 5 and having weekends to yourself. Like, I do miss that. Like, because I'm like, oh, I'm working all the time. And it's great because I'm working on my own stuff. But there is something to be said to be like, oh, it's 7 o'clock. That means I'm not working anymore. Turn off my computer. But like, I think also, you know, just it's okay to change paths and change what you want to do. And like, also, you know, learn to say no. Because like, you should definitely consider like, if there's a project that comes up to you and you're like, I don't know if I really want to do this, like, think about what you could doing in that time instead. Could you be building up your own art? Could you be like working on your own stuff? Because like, I'm a person that like publishers and people tend to approach now specifically seeking my art. They aren't seeking me as an artist who can do something. They're like, oh, I've seen these like 5 pieces that you've done before. I want another one of these specifically. So people come to me for that. So, you know, and that's because like, and it's great because like now more and more I can turn down work that's like, oh, we want you to be a wrist. And I'm like, I don't do that anymore. I just do what I want. Like, you're like, they're like, okay, well, can you draw this like cool person with some floral background? I'm like, yes, I can. Like, you know. So.
Sarah, why don't we turn it to you? What's one dream left unfulfilled and what's getting in the way?
I like fantasize about like just no longer being an illustrator or like doing a startup and just like becoming a history professor or something. Like, I want to live in what's probably like the real life equivalent of like the Clue Mansion and just like teach anthropology maybe. So for me, I'm a very ambitious person, and I'm very hungry, and I'm like, in my brain I have 40 tabs open at all times, and it goes back to like what I myself value. And I really, really love teaching, actually. So for me, in my head, I'm like, when I'm done doing all the things that I do, I just want to like teach 4th graders art. Like, that's what I'm genuinely interested in. And for me, in my mind, like, saying something like that means I've done all the company stuff, I've done all the publishing stuff, and I can just hang out. Like, my goal is to just hang out at the end of all of this. It's that simple.
I don't think that's possible, Sarah. I don't think you would ever be able to stop.
I can dream. We talked about dreams.
I don't know.
So there we go, you know. We'll see how
I wonder if, I mean, does anybody feel like they're gonna retire?
They will find me slumped over my drawing table / desk like Alex Toth, just like dead, and I'll have been there for like 2 days.
You won't have a deathbed, you'll have a death desk. That's what you're
I
going
joke
for.
that my ambition is to be like that guy who's on Pawn Stars, who like opened the pawn shop but is now 1,000 years old, just sits in the back room and yells at everybody. Like, that's what I'm going to be. I'm going to be that, but for Iron Circus.
I want to be like Bill Watterson. I just want to become a myth. I don't want to exist.
Like, did he even exist?
I don't know. He was chilling. Like, good for him.
Like legitimately, when I was like 7 or 8 years old, I was like, oh, it's so great that I've like decided to become an artist, because I can be an artist until like I'm 103. Like, there's no like, there's certain job like, or like sports or something. It's really hard to like still be doing sports past like the prime age, but there's no like prime age for an artist. I mean, there's so many artists that like reach their peak notoriety at like 80. So I mean, Hokusai, that was like what, his like 8th name or something like that. Like, just keep going. It's great.
Yeah.
I'm very excited.
Yoshi, to tie what you were saying as well, I also am just like so excited by the possibilities of like what's to come. Like, I don't want to try and plan within 5 years or 10 years. Like, I'm super like excited and lucky to have friends like Jenn and Yoshi. Like, Jenn went off and started to become a director, like at her stage in the career. Like, she's like, yeah, I'm done being an illustrator, crushed it, nailed it. I'm gonna go do something else. And that's awesome.
Well, speaking of, Jenn, why don't we let you answer the question too, about do you have an unfulfilled dream and something that's getting in the way?
Sure. Before that, I just want to tack on to what Yoshi said about illustrators kind of maybe reaching their levels of success a little bit later in life. Sometimes I've actually been doing film for less than a year, not even that. And sometimes I get really frustrated, especially during pandemic times when we can't do anything, we can't move, that I'm not where I want to be with my film career. And my partner has to remind me, these directors hadn't hit success until they were like 40, 50, and like much later on in life. And I think it's important to keep
much later on, in their 40s even,
to keep things in perspective like that. But on that note, I guess my dream would be to keep making films, hopefully in a more sustainable way than doing Kickstarter after Kickstarter, because that's gonna burn me out one day. I would love to be represented someday by somebody and keep telling stories that need to be told, and not just my stories, but other people's stories. I view myself as a director and a cinematographer as like a steward of other stories and my own, and I want to offer those services to other people too.
Kickstarters, I mean, they've been amazing. They've helped build Iron Circus. They've fast forwarded a lot of the growth that would have taken maybe twice as long. But they can get you. They can absolutely get you, because it's hard to keep up. Like, most are 30 days. Most Kickstarters are 30 days long. It's hard to keep up that level of excitement and just basically be a human bullhorn for 30 days and organize the shipping and the fulfillment and putting together the page and making sure the creator you're working with, if it's not you, is okay with the page, and then making the video and making sure everything hangs together. And it's just like, and I'm kind of at that phase now where I'm essentially running one every 5 weeks or so. And I mean, I guess in the end it's worth it because I keep doing it, so it must be, but yeah.
Time to delegate,
I know, right?
Time to delegate, yeah, I don't know. That was kind of where I had to close. We are at just about an hour now. If y'all are okay with staying a little bit longer, I'd love to hit just a couple of the questions that we've got in the Q&A area. Some I think were sort of hit a little bit, some are maybe a little bit too specific, but no judgment. I'm just gonna choose here. I think a really interesting question, and I know that this applies to at least some of you, is about where do you find people to work with? Where do you find people to hire when you want to delegate, as many of you have said? Where do you find these people?
Literally Twitter.
Honestly, yeah. Twitter has been fantastic. Whenever I see people who are like, oh, Twitter is useless, I'm like, that's just you admitting you don't know how to use Twitter. I find people I work with on Twitter. I also find it on recommendations from people I trust. My current print tech was recommended by my publicist, and perfect fit, amazing. When it comes to creators, all those hashtags that go around Twitter, like, visible women or visible NBs or portfolio day, those tags, I'm in
Mhm.
those fucking tags. I'm up in there. I'm bookmarking shit. You know, I'm going to people's pages, making sure they're not just illustrators, they're also comic artists, because those are two very different things. And I make graphic novels, so I need to hire comic artists. And I bookmark them. And sometimes I think, oh my God, in 2 years, you're going to be fucking killing it. You know, I'll keep tabs on you. And oh, wow, you seem super busy right now, but I'll keep tabs on you. And Twitter's been amazing. And I'm not saying like go and search in the Twitter search box like agent and then do that. Like that's a little sketch, but keep an eye open and see who's following who and who trusts who and the kind of things certain accounts say. So, you know, maybe when the day comes you do desperately need a media rights agent, you have 3 or 4 possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
I've hired through Twitter. I've been hired through Twitter. I found my co-creator for my graphic novel through Twitter. I met these 2 nerds on Twitter. I follow Spike on Twitter. Like, I really, when I say the phrase, I owe my career to my social media audience. Like, I mean it with every fiber of my being. It's worth investing in. It's not worth over focusing on. And like, you're constantly learning where that boundary is for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I have creators. I shouldn't say this, but I have creators who are very active on social media, and I have creators who absolutely refuse to engage in social media. And it does shake out in book sales. That's probably not what some more introverted people want to hear, but it does matter.
Jen, you were going to say something.
Oh, if there isn't a hashtag for you, or if or if you don't have a big following, what you can do is put out a call for specific needs. Like, I found my 2 main actresses on Twitter when I put out an audition call for the short film. That's how I found Erica Ishii and Rina Hoshino. And people are usually nice enough to like help retweet stuff like that because it helps other people get work. And as useless as Facebook is by itself, there are Facebook groups that can be useful for creatives. I myself am part of this group called like the Asian Creative Network, and there are other creative networks that are specific and more broad that helps you connect with other creatives too. If you're looking, like, surprisingly, Facebook has been pretty useful for that, Facebook groups in particular.
I've actually had a lot of luck at conventions, like being physically at conventions. I've had people like approach me or like be friends of other con goers or other artists or something, and just like meeting them IRL. I'm a very social person, so I react really well to people coming up and like talking to me. And I'm much more likely to be like, oh, okay, like this was fun. I enjoy this, and I would enjoy like having more of these kinds of conversations in the future. So I mean, I think I've been like pretty lucky in that like people have approached me for a lot of like my needs. A lot of times, like I mean, like, especially if you're thinking about working with someone collaboratively in the future, like just like put your name down, just kind of like be in the perimeter, be like, hey, like I can fulfill this need if you ever need it, just like I'm an option. Because like I've had people come up to me and they'll be like, I can do this for you, and I'm like, oh, I don't need this now. And then 6 months later, I'm like, oh fuck, I need this now. So, you know, like definitely, like I am like thinking about that. I do have people in the back of my head where I'm like, oh, like, you know, I may not be ready for this at this point in my career, but this is definitely something I could see needing in like, you know, a year or like less. And I'll be like, this is perfect. I've got this person that I'm like really interested in, like lining up with that. So
I'm going to ask a really. Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, sorry. To the point, yeah, it's like you never know when the new friend you've just made or the connection or the mutual that you've met is going to be like incredibly important to work you're doing in a year into. And just being constantly active in those spaces, you're putting yourself at the forefront of people's minds, and you're building that trust over time. And, you know, you start to have your own reputation. So if someone even comes asking for you or the other way around, there are people who are like, oh yeah, I can vouch for that person. I can recommend that person. And building those very organic relationships are way better than passing around your business card at a convention 500 times.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think it is like, I think it's hard to, like, we've been talking about this from a very like outgoing, sociable kind of perspective. I think it is something to be said that like the sorry, like the lifestyle, I guess, like the lifestyle, no, the career path that we have gone about, this entrepreneurial career path, seems to have like come from all of us being like pretty outgoing social people. And I acknowledge that that is like a different pathway that would have to be pursued for someone who doesn't like talking to people, who is pretty introverted. I think that it is definitely like an uphill battle. It's not impossible, but it is definitely a lot harder. You know, like we talk about, you can't just like draw your art and then have it in your room and then like, man, I hope someday someone finds me. Like, no one's gonna come find you. It's really hard. So, and also you can't just be out there and like, you know, I've made like 2 posts and like maybe I will be found because of these 2 posts. It's like, no, I mean, it's so obnoxious. I mean, I hate when I'm doing a Kickstarter and it's like my wall is nothing but like just promoting the Kickstarter over and over again. I feel so sorry for people who are following me and see every single one of those posts. But like every time I post, I'll get someone who's like, even though it's 50 posts deep, they'll be like, wow, this is the first time I've seen this. Thank you so much.
Exactly.
Like, yes. And you know,
there'll
maybe
be someone on the 29th day were like, you are doing a Kickstarter? And you're
Yes.
like, wow.
Oh my God, yes. Like when I was doing the Lackadaisy Kickstarter, it was being like profiled in freaking Forbes and stuff. And it went for 30 days. And Tracy Butler, the creator of Lackadaisy, was talking about it constantly on her Patreon, on her Twitter. I have 2 Twitter accounts that were mentioning it every other hour, 30 days in a row. And on the last day, people are like, oh, shoot, got in last minute. I didn't even know this was happening.
So you're never
Christ, are you for real? Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's like really hard when you're like the one who's doing all of it and you're kind of like in your own, you know, you're in your own bubble and you're like, fuck man, everyone must know shit. And then it's like, no. Like most people don't know. And that's like why you have to keep promoting. And that's like, also, again, it's really hard if you feel really self-conscious about promoting yourself. Yeah. It's like, if you decide to kind of like go it alone, you got to be your own big
absolutely.
advocate.
Until you can afford to hire someone to publicize for you, you are your publicist. And yes, it matters. I mean, again, I remember people who are kind of my generation trying to figure out where you have to hit the internet to make the money come out. And they would have a DeviantArt. Yeah, that's how old I am. They'd have a DeviantArt and then they'd put their portfolio folder up on DeviantArt. And then they'd post on the DeviantArt, on the blog section, hey guys, I'm available, thanks. And it's like, that's not gonna do it. That has never in the history of time done it.
Pinata, you gotta keep whacking.
Yes, exactly.
Until the candy comes out. Yeah, exactly. I've hit a point now where like my agent can, you know, go up to clients who've reached out and be like, listen, you need to cough up this amount because anything Sara touches goes viral. Like that's like a selling point as an illustrator. I'm not the best technical artist. I'm not the best. I don't come up with the best ideas, but like if you give it to me, I'll make sure people see it. And that's a value.
We do not live in a meritocracy. I am far. Nope. I know so many artists who are so much better than me that haven't had nearly as much sort of.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially if that is the value of the client is not looking for a very good illustration. They're looking for something that has reach. That's where my value as an illustrator comes in. It is, I can make sure a lot of eyeballs show up on this.
Exactly. Yeah. I tell people who are thinking of going with Iron Circus every time I launch a Kickstarter now, 27,000 people get an email about it. And it is an anomaly if something doesn't fund in 6 hours, no matter how much I'm asking. And that's why you should go with me. You know, and there are people who are like, oh my God, I could never say that about myself. And it's like, okay, that's fine. But just so you know, you are trying to sell yourself to this person. And comics is now this place where they have options. It's like, it's not just you and the other, you know, rinky dink fly by night people down the street. It's you and Harper Collins. It's you and Penguin Random House. These are that's your competition, fucking Penguin Random House. Yeah. So if someone's sitting here going, why you though? You better have a good reason.
Yeah.
We are so very close to where I know some of you have to actually leave to do other things. So I want to say a huge thank you to all of you for sharing even just the small part of all of your stories that we got to get to today. I'm going to go through, and I'd love everybody to, a little promo. What are the best URLs to find you? Where do people find you? Also, anybody watching this, this is going up on YouTube. You may be watching it on YouTube. I will bug Jonathan and Lindsay at the SOI to get all of our handles and URLs and everything on there so you can find us there. But I'm going to go like this, and we'll start with Jen.
Yeah, if you are interested in looking at some of my film work and supporting it, you can support me at patreon.com/Jenn Ravenna.
It's Jen with 2 N's.
2 N's, yeah.
And Ravenna with 2 N's, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Yoshi.
Okay, cool. I think the place I'm most active is Twitter. That's at Yoshi Squared. Also YoshiYoshitani.com. And then I think the biggest thing that I've been promoting is I've been talking about my tarot deck that comes out in a week's time. I got the Tarot of the Divine. So look at that gold foil. I know, right? It's very shiny. But yeah, you can check that out and find me online too.
Great. And Spike.
Hi. You can find everything I'm publishing right now on ironcircus.com. All of our stuff is also available on bookshop.org and amazon.com. You can find my personal Twitter at iron_spike. But if I'm saying ACAB, fuck 12, and look at this awesome porn too much for you, you can also follow the Iron Circus Comics Twitter, which is Iron Circus Comics, spelled COMIX, because spelled properly, it will not fit. We're also, for some reason, on Tumblr at ironcircuscomics.tumblr.com. Iron Circus Comics also has a page on Facebook, which is just search Iron Circus Comics and it's there. And we're on Instagram at Iron Circus. Both the Facebook and the Instagram are updated daily. The Iron Circus Comics Twitter is updated daily, and I will literally not shut the fuck up at iron_spike on Twitter. I also have a podcast, which is Dirty Old Ladies. You can find that wherever you stream podcasts. It's pretty much just me and 2 other friends of mine who work in comics shooting the shit for about an hour every other week. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have a comic idea, please check out my submissions guidelines. We favor the strange and amazing.
Awesome. Sarah.
So you can find me at Sara Alfageeh, just my full name, on Twitter and Instagram, and check out Play Multiverse on Twitter for a way to see how we're changing up tabletop RPGs and making it more accessible. And we're always looking for new team members, so shoot us a message there. I don't have any projects to plug because a company and a graphic novel is plenty right now.
And I'll just say I'm Marc Scheff, and I'm here kind of representing Drawn and Drafted, the company that Lauren Panapinto, who is here today, and I run. If you go to drawnanddrafted.com, that kind of links to all the different stuff we do. We've got courses and free downloads. We also have an art community on Slack where a lot of these kinds of conversations happen with folks who have done Kickstarters or all these different kinds of projects, and you can go and join that community and ask. There's no question too basic or complicated. We talk about everything from contract specifics to I just got this weird email. Oh my God, it actually was a scam. I looked it up. So anyway, that's us, drawnanddrafted.com. And I'm Marc Scheff. That's just my handle everywhere. And I just want to say thank you, all 4 of you, so much. I want everyone here to go and follow their stuff. It is free, absolutely free, to reshare anything they post on social media. You should all go do that because it does help. And I think that's it. I want to let you guys go because I know you have other stuff to do, but thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Enjoyed it.
Thanks,
Yeah, it was great.
Thanks everybody who came. And this is where I hope Lindsay turns